when we look at Indiana's economy today, this isn't your father or your mother's Indiana economy. This is not how it used to be. Things have changed. First off, we look at agriculture. We're still very agriculturally productive. A little bit more diversity in terms of the stuff that we're producing. A lot of that's kind of going to the local food movement, the organic food movement that's starting to kick into gear. But what's happening is there's a fewer number of farms, but the size of the farms are increasing. So essentially, as farmers as they start to die, their next generation says, you know what, I'm just going to sell it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do farming. So they sell it to another farmer. And so that's how there's fewer numbers of them, but they're increasing in size, increasing in acreage. So agriculturally, we're still producing, of course, a lot of corn and beans. Throw in popcorn. We make a lot of corn for popcorn. But we have a whole variety of various things in which here agriculturally we produce. Also, in terms of livestock, lots of pigs, lots of hogs, which is why in Indiana, we have a lot of pork products. For example, the pork tenderloin is so popular here. So we look at agriculturally, we're still doing quite well. And so a lot of those rural counties, those are the key drivers to those economies. But they're not huge in terms of attracting a lot of laborers. Because of the mechanization of farming and agriculture, there's less demand for jobs. There's less demand for workers in a lot of those agricultural areas. And so that also speaks to a lot of the decline that I talked about in the previous video. Further, we look at steel and metals. There's been a slight and continued decline in terms of those particular industries, particularly in Northwest Indiana. What's happening is now you have the globalization of steel, and so now India and China are producing their own steel, and they're producing a ton of it. So what's happening is, although Gary in this particular area was competing with just pretty much Pittsburgh as far as being the dominant steel area of the world, now there's many different other competitors, and it's more of a global competition. And so what that's done is it's led to a decline in terms of steel and metal. Also, automobiles have become less dependent on steel, using less steel, but also people aren't buying as much in terms of cars as much as they used to. Also, construction has slowed down since the economic recession of 2008 and all of that. Further, you're going to see also the fact that cars are lasting longer means that there's less demand for new cars. And so that's kind of, I guess, a negative of having more reliable automobiles, is people don't need them as much. People aren't going to be buying them as much. So that's another kind of thing we could throw into that. Now let's move on to manufacturing. So we definitely see a decline in industries associated with the United States automobiles. The automotive market. And so we see Anderson and Fort Wayne have been hit hard by this throughout much of that I-69 cluster. For example, in Anderson, they have this company called Delphi. Delphi made various electronics that were used for Detroit automobiles that were produced there. So as those went in the tank, well, guess what? So did Delphi go in the tank. And so you see a lot of these companies that produce parts for U.S. automobiles seeing a decline. However, if you look at the automotive manufacturing as from a bigger view, from the entire state view, it's actually fairly stable. So while we have seen, of course, declines, especially those that are closest geographically to Detroit, there in the northern and eastern part of the state, have seen declines. We've also seen more recently kind of an increasing amount of foreign direct investment. So where Michigan and Ohio have just been devastated by the decline of U.S. automakers, Honda, Toyota, Subaru opening factories in Indiana has helped to kind of reinvigorate a lot of the state's automotive manufacturing. But of course, there's a geography to this. Gary, Anderson, Michigan City, Muncie, you tell those places that, hey, yeah, automotive industry is doing great in Indiana, they'd laugh at you. But if you go once again to Gary, Evansville, south of Lafayette, where you see large assembly plants, it's definitely helped to offset a lot of those losses. Further, there's of course been, as there's been a decline in the secondary sector, as there's been a decline in jobs available in the primary sector in Indiana, there's definitely been a growth in tertiary sector jobs. Once again, why and how would Indiana be seeing a positive net migration if everything was negative? Of course, where we're seeing a lot of the positives is in the tertiary sector growth. And so we're seeing an increasing number of service sector jobs, increasing number of business, increasing number of public relations, engineering types of jobs. And so we're seeing more diversity in terms of our economic sectors, but really we're seeing a lot of that growth in tertiary sector jobs.